I'm Shené Mothilal, and I'm the solution owner of Digital Money Manager. Standard Bank recently launched an exciting new feature called Standard Bank Money Reels, and this gives customers their very own year in review, but from their money's point of view. What this revealed was a very interesting picture around the type of year that South Africans have had. Based on social media comments, while some reflected that they probably highlighted some spending habits that they should rethink in the future, the overall picture really paints a story of balancing priorities. So it's certainly bringing in indications of some smart behaviors as well. A recent retail client spending analysis between September 2024 and September 2025 revealed that in the first 5 days after payday, clients are really prioritizing their spend on essentials. In the top spot, we see loan repayments at 39%. This is really responsible behavior to make sure that you stay up to date with your payment obligations, but also highlights the high dependency that South Africans have on debt to finance our lifestyles. In the second spot, we have savings at 38%, which is also a very reassuring trend. The next three that round up our top 5 really focus on the essentials. So spending on clothing at 24%, on groceries at 19%, and insurance as well. And really what this is telling us is that customers are really prioritizing their paycheck first on the essential items and thereafter shifting their spending into more discretionary spend like clothing as well as self-care. The client spending analysis also revealed that the top 3 spending months were February 2025, September 2024, and March 2025 in that order. So what is driving the spending across these 3 months is something you may ask. Across all 3 months, savings and loans really dominates the category of spend. And this makes a lot of sense if we think about it. Starting with February, this coincides with tax year end. And what is typical at this time of year is the rush to try and benefit from savings before the year lapses. This is also when we see a higher spend on admin and services, and this category really reflects personal services or professional services like accounting and lawyers. Moving next into September, this is the time of year that invokes a fresh start. And so we tend to see spikes in spending really not typical. And this continues until November, which sparks the start of festive spending. And lastly, March. This is the time of year many people look forward to, as you tend to get bonuses during this time. And what this tells us is that this extra money is being spent on savings as well as loans. While the festive season is synonymous with fun and higher spending in South Africa, an interesting observation was that December actually wasn't the peak spending month. What we found is that the peak spending months are really driven by savings and loans. This tells us that in 2025, South Africans did a few things. Firstly, they made a concerted effort to save. Secondly, they still had a significant proportion of their spending that went towards loans. Thirdly, customers tried to really spread their expenses across the year rather than concentrating it in one month. In fact, November spending was actually higher than December. And what this tells us is that customers are trying to balance their spending by taking advantage of the specials that have essentially become a month of specials over the November period and really balancing their enjoyment while still trying to make sure that their rand stretches as far as it can. The balancing of priorities showed up in the data in a few ways. Firstly, the age-old question, eat out or cook in? The data tells us that spending on groceries was 6 times more than spending on takeout, telling us that customers were prioritizing essentials first. But you may ask, when do we eat out? The data also told us that customers tend to spend on takeout more in the week after payday, once they've gotten their essentials taken care of. This also coincides with the time when we see spikes in clothing, as well as fitness and self-care, so moving towards discretionary spending after they've covered the essentials. Lastly, on a typical month, rather than saving upfront, we see that customers are saving around mid-month, which tells us that they're saving what's left over rather than prioritizing savings at the beginning. So to recap, spending is really being driven by savings and loan payments. And in the first 5 days after receiving a paycheck, South Africans are really prioritizing their spend on essentials. Are there opportunities for us to make smarter choices? Quite possibly. When we looked at understanding what the most expensive day of the week was for South Africans, it was no surprise when we saw Thursday. And I think most South Africans can probably piece together what that day is synonymous with. On a more serious note, it's only in understanding our default spending patterns when we come into money that we can really make more informed future choices. This is why we created Standard Bank Money Reels. It creates that moment of reflection about your money choices, and also why using our money movements, budget manager, credit score, and future payments are so important, just to give you that extra edge so that you can change the narrative of what your story will look like in 2026.